Today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of one man's transformation, how a brilliant mind, an intellectual, became the unwilling martyr for a nation's revolution. It's really the story of how a pen became far more dangerous than any sword.
So that's the big question, isn't it? The story of José Rizal is really the story of an idea so potent that it helped bring down 300 years of colonial rule, even though the man who wrote it was actually arguing for peace.
You know, to really understand the revolutionary, we first have to meet the prodigy. Born in Calamba, Laguna, Rizal's early life was, well, a pretty clear sign of the towering intellect he was going to become.
Before he was ever a national hero, he was just one of the most brilliant people of his time. And honestly, the word polymath barely even does him justice. He was a true Renaissance man whose talents just exploded across both the arts and sciences.
I mean, just look at this list for a second. An eye surgeon, a celebrated writer, a polyglot who was fluent in an incredible 22 languages. He sculpted, he farmed, he was a historian, and he could handle both a sword and a pistol. It's an almost unbelievable range of skills for just one person.
But what's so important to get here is that this genius wasn't just built in libraries. When he was only 10 years old, Rizal saw his own mother get falsely accused of poisoning and then forced to walk 30 kilometers to prison. An event like that, it plants a seed of doubt in the system, a personal injustice that would end up fueling a national cause.
Okay, let's move to the next chapter of his transformation. Rizal leaves the Philippines, and suddenly his own personal experiences with injustice start to mix with all these powerful new political ideas that were swirling around Europe at the time.
His departure was practically a secret mission. He left without his parents even knowing, with his brother Paciano funding the whole thing. The official story? He was there to finish his medical studies. The real story? He was there to figure out why his homeland was suffering, and what, if anything, could be done about it. This quote from a speech he gave in Madrid, it tells you everything about where his head was at. At this point, his vision was all about enlightenment and equality. He wasn't calling for a split from Spain. He was arguing that Filipinos were just as brilliant as any European, and they deserved the exact same rights and respect. And this list just proves it. He joined a group called the Propaganda Movement, and their whole agenda was about assimilation, not independence. They wanted a seat in the Spanish Parliament, basic freedoms, legal equality. Their goal was to fix the system from the inside. Okay, this is where the transformation really kicks into high gear. Rizal, the reformist, picks up his pen, but this time it's not for poetry. It's like he's trying to perform surgery on the entire social body of the Philippines. And let's just say the patient, the Spanish colonial government, did not appreciate it. His first novel, Noli Me Tangere, was a bombshell. It was basically him holding up a giant mirror to the abuses of the church and the colonial authorities. It wasn't a call to arms, it was a call to just see, to diagnose the sickness that was rotting the country from the inside out. But then, 4 years later, you can feel how much the tone has changed. El Filibusterismo is a much, much darker book. You can feel his frustration with the lack of progress. Through the book's main character, he starts to explore the path of revolution. He's asking a question he never would have before. What happens when peaceful reform just doesn't work?
And this, right here, is the great irony of his life. His whole goal was to start a conversation, to inspire peaceful change. But the Spanish authorities, they only saw sedition. They banned his books and branded him an enemy of the state, effectively turning him into the very revolutionary they were afraid of.
So now he's officially an enemy of the state, and his journey takes its most fateful turn. Instead of staying safe in Europe, he makes the unbelievable decision to go home and face whatever was coming.
And listen to this. Even when he gets back, his actions are still those of a reformist. He doesn't start some secret revolutionary army. He founds La Liga Filipina, a civic group for mutual protection, education, and legal reforms. It was yet another attempt at peaceful, community-based change. But the Spanish government was just done with him. Only days after he started the League, Rizal was arrested. No trial. He was immediately shipped off to Dapitan, a remote town in Mindanao. In a flash, the intellectual critic was transformed into a political prisoner. Now, what he did in exile is just incredible. You'd think he'd be plotting revenge, right? No! He built a community. He practiced medicine. He started a school for boys. He engineered a modern water system, and he became a scientist. Even as a prisoner, his first instinct was to create, to build, and to make things better for the people around him. And here, In his own words, you can see a deep personal shift. This quote, it reveals a man who has totally come to terms with his fate. He doesn't see his suffering as a punishment anymore. He sees it as a necessary sacrifice for the cause. The intellectual had now fully embraced the role of the martyr.
All right, let's move to the final act, where this all builds to its tragic, inevitable end. This is the final stage of his transformation, the one he had no control over, where his death became more powerful than his life ever was.
The end came so fast. He was actually given permission to leave his exile to go serve as a doctor in Cuba. But while he was at sea, the Philippine Revolution, a revolution inspired by his words but not led by him, finally exploded. He was arrested on the ship, sent back to Manila, put through a sham trial for rebellion, and condemned to die.
On the morning of December 30th, 1896, as he faced a firing squad made up of his own countrymen, a doctor checked his pulse and found it to be completely normal. His last words were, "It is finished."
The Spanish authorities truly believed that this one execution would be the final act, that it would be enough to just extinguish the flames of rebellion for good.
But they were so wrong. The thing is, by executing him, they gave the revolution its ultimate symbol. The very man who had actually condemned the uprising became its most powerful martyr. His death accomplished what his life's work never could. It united a people in their fight for freedom.
So in the end, Rizal's transformation was completed, not by him, but by his enemies. He spent his entire life arguing for a place for Filipinos inside the Spanish Empire, only to become the symbol of their separation from it. And it really leaves us with a huge question about legacy and whether anyone can ever truly control the ideas they unleash on the world.